Hello everyone, welcome to a new update to the GHB Tempest Trial tier list. This time we'll take a look at Louise. So Louise comes in with a fairly unimpressive set, outside of a decent weapon, especially considering her low-ish attack. She also has a very similar stat line to Bridal, as will be compared a bit later. She also has, I believe, the same BST as Bridal, so that's fun. Bouquet Bow is just a Swift Sparrow bow. There is not much to say other than this. Like I said before, a slaying bow will tend to be better than whatever this bow is. And if you're not using slaying bow, you're going to either be using fire sweep or maybe even to some extent brave bow. Because it's literally Bravelyn, except with a bit less attack. Though I will say Brave Bow on her is definitely less advised, because you're comparing Bravelyn's 36 attack with attack plus to Louise's 31. So obviously, well, Brave Bow is not exactly too great. Attack speed bond is not so bad, but the problem is it's on a horse unit. Horse units and bond skills don't tend to go too well together. As a matter of fact, except certain very specific occasions, which are units such as solely stall able Kane, which needs to be around other units, it doesn't tend to be even worthwhile to run it on them because they tend to spread around the map so much more. And if they're not spreading around, it's because they're going in a ball formation to buff each other by 6 to all stats. Nothing else. So a bond skill tends to be just a dead A slot 90% of the time, so Sparrow does better. You could also run solo skill and so on. They tend to do a lot better than bond skill is the issue. I guess you can still fodder her for it. I don't understand why it's luck to 5-star, since attack speed bond is genuinely one of the worst attack bond. Actually, no, I would say it is the worst attack bond seal, or not seal, skill. Because the thing is, attack press bond, it helps you tank. So you can just set up your unit next to another unit and tank a bit easier on enemy phase. Same thing with attack def bond. So those skills tend to be very good on a lot of units, especially tanks. Attack speed bond, on the other hand, requires a very specific B skill that requires you to pull one of, I believe, 3 units, one of which you should never fodder because it's Alm. Legendary Alm is way too strong to be foddered. So it reduces your number of units to Marita and Adrift Korin. And Marita is Flashing Blade 4, so basically just Korin. It's not great, is it? No follow-up can be really good with attack speed bond because it allows you to block a lot more units, such as Zelgius and so on, from using Bullfighter on you. The problem is it's just that. It requires no follow-up, so only, first of all, infantry unit can really use it. And 2, well, no follow-up is not easily obtainable, is it? So, yeah. Anyway, let's move on to the next merge. Since there's nothing to say about Own Cavalry, y'all already know what it does. So, yeah, she gets the Loki treatment. She actually gets the exact same stats as Loki, except it's even worse here because Loki gets like 1 speed, 1 res, and 1 HP, just like Louise. But the thing is, Loki has also 156 BST, while Louise has 149, 150. One or the other, I'm not too sure which one. And not to mention, Loki does not have a unit of the exact same weapon typing that's actually very similar to her stat line. So, yeah, you can imagine, the extra attack would have definitely helped, and if it was me, I would have just made her level 1 stat 8 attack, 8 speed, and 7 res instead of the opposite. Although it does help to some extent, her def stat is absolutely abysmal, so that can be actually a problem. It is quite a shame because I absolutely adore Louise's art. I genuinely think it's probably one of the best art Wada Sachiko has ever done for this game, which is quite high praise considering he has done like 20 characters at this point. But it is what it is. Let's move on to comparison. Y'all knew I was going to make this comparison, because, I mean, I've already said it. So, because of the merge update, keep in mind, they have basically tied speed, and HP-wise, well, Louise has 5 HP over Bravelyn, just counting the +1 to all stat and not just like the unit at +1 versus a +0. So, yes, Louise has 5 more HP, 2 less attack, that's actually pretty brutal for her. 1 less def, doesn't really matter because of the HP, and 2 more res. To put it simply, her stat line is just spread all of the wrong ways, but you can actually still make it work somewhat. On lower merges, she's going to be outperformed by Bravelyn regardless of IVs that Bravelyn has, unless your Bravelyn is somehow attack minus. The problem with Bravelyn, however, is that it's a free unit for the most part. If you weren't stupid during Choose Your Legend 1, you have probably picked Bravelyn. So you probably have a neutral, unmerged Bravelyn at bare fucking minimum. Even unmerged, she is just better than Louise. Now, if you put quite a few merges on Louise, that can change, but you may have actually more merges on Bravelyn and so on, so Louise can typically be just worse. That said, she does have 1 strength, which is the entire reason why she went from A tier to A plus tier in my tier list for GHB and Bridal tier list, which, yeah, spoiler alert, she's A plus. I consider her worth building, but it's only if you're going to commit to it. Louise at +10 has 35 res. Head on that Fury and you have 38 res. 38 res is pretty solid to actually, well, ploy people. It just means that anyone that has a base res unmerged of 33 or less gets ployed. Unless they have Fury, which they typically won't, so that's good. That said, that requires high investment, and if you have Fury 4, you can add an extra point to it, which is fairly amazing for her. However, like I said, it takes a lot of investment because she's a Tempest Trial unit. It does cost 2,700 Grail to +10 her. Which is fairly depressing, honestly. But it kinda is what it is. Bravelyn will typically do better if you have an attack plus variant, even at +10, unless you ploy the enemy. However, the fact that she can ploy means that she is a lot more versatile in what she can do. The problem with Bravelyn is that, yes, she's pretty strong, but if you take her out of a horse team, she typically won't do nearly as well. Louise can be in a mixed team pretty easily, in fact, very, very easily, and can actually help support your teammates, unlike Bravelyn. Bravelyn cannot really use ploys consistently unless you take a weapon and refine it to res, which is also something Louise can do, by the way, so just pointing that out if you want your ploy to be more consistent at low merges. Though you typically should refine it to defense so she can actually take hits from dragons a bit easier. And then hit Desperation a lot easier. You get the idea. So overall, I'd say Louise is basically a worse Bravelyn unless you want her to be also a support to your team. As for what build you should run on her, I have nothing to showcase, honestly, because at the end of the day, anything you can run of Bravelyn, she can also run. Outside of Mulligear, but that's honestly the worst Choose Your Legend 1 weapon of the list. I say it's the worst because it's basically Divine Naga, except it gives 3 speed instead of 3 res and only works against mages. Anything that isn't a mage, it doesn't work against. And since her res is so piss poor, she can just die from a 50 attack mage that doubles her. Yay! Ooh boy! Yeah, it's pretty pathetic. And on the other hand, you have Roy that has an heavy blade weapon. That's always going to be good because you only have one heavy blade seal. Lucina is a better buffer than Marth in certain cases. For example, with Brave Bows, he can up the attack. She can up the attack by upward to 9 attack and 3 speed, which is more than Marth could ever do. Ike has a cooldown -1 weapon, so despite the second effect being a lot more inconsistent, it's always going to be good. So obviously Bravelyn kind of got the shit end of the stick, which is fine because it's fucking Lyn, who cares? I just don't understand why Lyn's stat line has not been power creeped yet. It's been almost 2 years, and she has yet to be power crept. The only Choose Your Legend unit that has not been clearly power crept to this point. Roy was already power crept the second Siegbert got released, and to this day Siegbert is still your best offense aggressively, unless you're counting on Rid, which relies on debuff. Siegbert doesn't, so Siegbert can be considered even better in certain cases, because Siegbert has 34-35 offensively, but also a really good depth stat, which is kind of lacking for most sword calves, especially for combos like Gale Force. So yeah, Lucina has been power crept by Nephany after Nephany got a refine, at least combat wise. Utility wise has yet to be really power crept. I'd say Lucina is probably the unit that aged the best to some extent, but I guess you could still make the case that Marth beats her as a buff tool to some extent in certain cases. Personally, I don't think so, but that's fine. And then you have Brave Ike, who has been power crept very early on by Linus. Linus has more attack, a pref that actually has a second effect that actually really helps, life and death. Has almost the same amount of depth, but also a speed stat that can actually be used to pull off some pretty nice stuff, allowing him to be basically a crossbreed of Raven and Brave Ike, but just better than both. And then you have Brave Lyn, who just got new competition in quotation, who still doesn't really match up to it. Almost 2 years afterward. It's been a year everyone has been power crept except her. I don't get it. I really don't get it. Oh well. Still, Louise does have her utility, so if you feel like her ploys would actually help your team, well, this is a good path for it. As for the tier displacement, as I said, she is A+. As I said, A+ is typically where I consider characters worth building. Though, for her it's a bit shaky. It really comes down to what you need most. Because if you already have a Brave Lyn, and she's already merged to some extent, and or she has attack plus already, then you probably really won't need her nearly as much. It's a lot like Delphia, you know, in the sense that Delphia is a decent unit, but she also has quite a bit of competition that isn't free to play. Is the issue. So for some people, Delphia will be absolutely amazing to them, to the point where she can even be considered S-. But for the common folk, they already have a unit that's very similar to her, like Ishtar. Hell, Ishtar is actually better in my opinion, because cooldown -1 is so much more consistently helpful. Units such as Ophelia also will just completely dwarf her in power. You get the idea. It's just very dependent on your situation. She is worth merging, but only if you feel like it. And yeah. This concludes this GHB Tempest Trial tier list episode. Hopefully I did cover it pretty well and you learned a thing or two. So, as per usual, Have a nice one, everyone. Thanks for watching.